You may recall from one of our earlier videos that we have close to 60 radiators in the castle. A number of these radiators have valves that are corroded, leaking, and have seized in an open position. That means there's no way to remove a single radiator and fix valves without partially or fully draining the system. That could easily be over 1,000 liters. So how does one remove and fix a single radiator without having to drain the entire system? Behold, the Rothenberger Rofrost Turbo 2, capable of going from 20 degrees Celsius to minus 10 in 10 minutes or less, depending on your pipe size. So, how does this very complicated device work? Well, you simply take these clamps and you attach them to the supply side pipe and the return side pipe. You then come over and turn on this very complicated switch. And what happens, those clamps get super cold and they form ice plugs here and here. I can then remove this valve, and this entire radiator without any fear of water coming out of these pipes. When you're done, you take the clamps off, and what happens is the plugs melt and water flow returns. Pretty cool. I need to replace the lock shield valve on this radiator. It is seized open, it's super corroded, and on top of it, it's leaking fluid. I've attached both clamps to the pipes, and you can see it's about 20 degrees Celsius. So all I do now is turn this on, wait about 15 minutes, and the ice plugs will form. So we're reading minus 10 degrees Celsius on each clamp. I've opened up this valve fully, and this one was already open, and I've opened up the bleed valve on the end, and there's no liquid coming out of here. So that tells me this radiator is now isolated from the system. The next thing I need to do is bleed the radiator fluid out. So what I do is I crack this nut open and slowly let the liquid come out. That takes about 15 to 20 minutes. It's 12 to 15 liters of water I've got to get out of it. I've drained and removed the radiator. The next step is to replace this valve and this valve. These valves are wide open, remember, so these water ice plugs are still holding really well. This is always the scariest part for me because these things get on and are so stiff that I fear that I'm going to shear the pipe when I'm trying to get it off. But I've been lucky so far and I've done 4 of these, so let's see what happens. I was able to remove the old valves. The next step will be to clean these threads and then install the new valves here. But you don't use Teflon tape to do this. You use a combination of this threading compound and you wrap this around the threads. It's like a flax fiber. It mixes in with the threading compound, and when you screw the new valves on, it forms a super tight, watertight seal. I've got the new valves installed, and now what I'm going to do is turn off the Rohrfrost and let these clamps and ice plugs defrost. And what I'm going to be looking for are leaks really here and here. I'm not too worried about these are brand new valves, so this is closed, and now this is fully shut. In the meantime, while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'll take the radiator downstairs and power flush it. Over the multiple decades of service, these radiators have built up a lot of sludge inside of them. So I've set up this special rig to power wash them, basically connecting them to my garden hose and trying to run the water through at maximum pressure from this side, and also from the air bleed valve, which I took out. You can see all of that black sludge is just coming out of this. Usually takes a couple rounds to get this to the point where the water is clear. The temperature is back up close to 20 degrees Celsius, and there are no visible leaks on these valves. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the clamps. And normally I would put the radiator back into place, but this wall is in such bad shape, I think we're going to take the opportunity to fix it. Well, as often happens, parts of this wall were in far worse shape than we first thought, so we're going through the process of re-cementing and then replastering this, and I'll paint it, and then once that is done, I'll put the radiator back into play. Well, there you go. I've got the radiator remounted, refilled, there's no leaks, it's ready for service. Had I done this the old school way, I'd have to drain 22 radiators from the second floor, 20 radiators from the first floor, as well as all the water in the interconnecting piping. That's about 700 liters of water I have to drain and refill just to deal with one set of bad valves on a radiator. That's a very costly and time-consuming endeavor. Not all of my valve replacements have been as straightforward as what you just saw. In this case, I didn't have enough exposed pipe to work with, so I actually had to dig into the walls to find enough straight section of pipe that I could put my ice clamps onto. And in 90% of the cases, we've had to deal with the walls behind the radiators, which haven't been touched since they were installed easily some 60 to 70 years ago. So there you have it. My goal was to address the 11 to 12 radiators that had the bad valves. The reason this is important is now I can more effectively balance the system, meaning I can equally distribute the heat to all the radiators. With 60 radiators, that's a lot of heat. The bonus was we could repair the walls behind the radiators at our leisure. Had we hired somebody, one, it would have been really expensive, and two, we couldn't have addressed the walls in the time frame they would have given us. So, it's one of those classic cases of working smarter, not harder.